at 7:05 p.m. We are here for a special legislative meeting, and you have an agenda before you. I would like to make two small changes if we can. One is I would like to present a mayor's report. I promise I'll keep it very short. And under unfinished business, I'd like to bring up.
Do you mind pulling up the agenda?
Excuse me?
Sure. I was asking Jeff if, thank you. Apologies.
Damn it. Well,
So add the mayor's report immediately after the approval of agenda, and item number 2 under unfinished business are charter changes. Are those changes acceptable to the council?
Yes.
that's fine by me.
It's fine by me as well.
Fine by me.
Very good. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Are any other changes required? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I'll give the motion to Councilmember Lingua, the second to Councilmember Mayers. Is there any discussion or public
Oh, no,
comments
not me.
of the moderator?
It's
Oh,
faux.
no, not.
Oh,
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I did not make that motion.
okay. Well, that's one of the problems of having virtual meetings. It's hard to tell who's talking. So that must have been Councilmember Foe made the motion and Councilmember Mayers made the second. Is that correct?
Apologies. I'm sorry. I have one question. I don't
Yes.
see, are we also discussing the charter change?
Yes, I'm adding that as
No.
item number 2 under unfinished business.
Oh, got it. Sorry. Okay.
So, so we have a motion on the floor to approve the agenda as amended. The 2 amendments again are a mayor's report, which I promised to keep short after the approval of the agenda, and item 2, the discussion of the charter change. Are there any public comments or council comments on the agenda as amended? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote for approval of the agenda. Councilmember Dixon?
Aye.
Councilmember Foe?
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua?
Aye.
Councilmember Henry is not present, I believe. Is that correct? Councilmember Richardson is not present, I believe. Is that correct? Councilmember Mayers?
Aye.
And I will abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. That brings us to the mayor's report. I will focus very briefly on the status of the COVID-19 crisis. We passed a sad milestone in the county yesterday in that we now have more than 10,000 cases in the county. I believe we have approximately 700 deaths, each of those cases is a very sick person. Each of those deaths is a tragedy. And as I've said before, we are still not over this. We're starting to see some reductions in the state. We're starting to see some flattening in the county, although it's still been increasing over the last couple of weeks. Number of cases is still going up. So I hope we'll do better soon. County Executive Alsobrooks on her county call last night stated that it may be that Prince George's County, because we have been so hard hit, will be coming out from underneath restrictions slower than the rest of the state. And she thinks that that may be true of Montgomery County also, I believe. So that will conclude my report on my mayor's report. Are there any public comments this evening? Hearing no public comments, let's move on to legislative action items. The first legislative action item is introduction of ordinance 2020-OR-09.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You are chopping a little bit, but I don't know if it's my internet connection, or can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We can hear both of you.
Okay. Well, in that case, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, if I may, I'd like to introduce ordinance 2020-OR-09, an ordinance concerning FY 2021 budget and tax rates. And this is for the purpose of adopting operating and capital budgets for the town of Riverdale Park for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30, 2021, setting rates of real and personal property and operating property taxation for such fiscal year and levying such taxes, and matters generally relating to the adoption of town budgets and levying of taxes and setting of tax rates for the town of Riverdale Park for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30, 2021.
Thank you, Councilman Lingua, for introducing the ordinance. Much appreciated. There is, of course, we traditionally at introduction do not have any council discussion. If there are members of the public who would like to comment on this, please speak up at this time. Hearing none, let's move on to legislative
Mr.
action
Mayor?
item number. Yes.
I know that we don't have any public comments, but just for purposes of the record, and if the members of the public would like to watch this at a later time, I did receive an email from a resident who expressed concerns that that what he saw in the town crier was that there would be an increase in property tax revenue. And I know this happens annually, but I was hoping that you could provide an explanation on the record as to exactly what is occurring, increase in tax revenue versus increase in the tax rate, just for the public.
I'm willing
or
to.
It doesn't have to be the mayor, whomever.
Mr. Town Manager or Mr. Jones, do you have that information in front of you from the public hearing? Mr. Smith, I see you're here also.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I don't have the notice in front of me, but the state of Maryland requires certain language to be in the notice for the public hearing in reference to a tax rate. The town has experienced growth in the assessable base, the value of properties within the town. By keeping the tax rate at the 0.654, which it has been for at least 10 years, by maintaining that same rate on a higher base, the town will receive additional tax revenue. However, the town is not, with this budget as proposed, is not raising the tax rate.
Okay, I actually have the public hearing notice from last week in front of me, and the the real property tax revenues will increase by 6.2%, and that is because property values have gone up since last year. So that's the number that's in there. And I will add, having seen the same letter that Councilmember Dixon saw, that we reduced revenues, expected revenues in many other places based on our expectations of what will happen to the economy next year and what will be happening to our tax revenues for this year, and that this is an extraordinarily lean budget, and that there is not a place that we can easily cut that quantity of money if we wanted to have flat tax revenues. So do you want to say anything else, Councilmember Dixon, before we move on, or is that sufficient?
I think that's sufficient. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is, if I can find my copy of the agenda that's large enough I can read, a motion to approve the extension of contract with Bates Trucking for residential trash collection services for a period of 3 years. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Lingua. Is there discussion of the motion?
We are considering extending our contract with Bates Trucking for residential trash collection services for a period of 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the current contract and thus the extended contract has an option to terminate the contract with 120 days notice to approximately 4 months to Bates Trucking, should we choose to do that, and should we wish to find a different collector to work with. So just wanted to mention that as part of the discussion, because I know that there are members of the council and members of the public that are interested in moving in that direction. Wanted to let everyone know that it's pretty easy to do so. So is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, are there any public comments, just to make sure? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote again. Councilmember Dixon?
Mayor, I'm going to abstain from the vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Foe?
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua?
Aye.
Councilmember Henry is absent. Is that still correct? Councilmember Richardson is absent. Is that still correct? Councilmember Mayers? Councilmember Mayers?
Aye.
Thank you. I vote aye as well, which has a vote of 401, the one being Councilmember Dixon, and the 4 supplying the required number of votes to renew the contract. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion regarding tenant advocacy. This was brought up under new business last week. Councilmember Dixon, you brought this up. Would you like to continue discussion?
Sure. I raised it at our last legislative meeting. There was a request made by a group supporting residents, and the request was to ask the town to write a letter that we would send or post. It's not clear, but write a letter directed at landlords within the town, asking them to consider certain, what's the word? I guess not,
Flexibilities?
yeah, certain flexibilities during this time when it comes to rent and the inability of certain residents to potentially pay the rent and so forth. So I know the town manager received the letter, the same letter that I received, which is a sample letter which was passed by Mount Rainier. It's not a sample for them, but I thought we could use that as a sample. And I hope that the council will support. The position is obviously would be non-binding. The town doesn't have the ability to require any landlord in town to abide by the rules, but I thought that in light of all that we've been doing to demonstrate our support to residents, we could also show that we recognize the struggles that some of our residents are having and propose that landlords take these things into consideration.
Councilwoman, I wouldn't have any problem supporting something like that. I mean, it's how I personally feel, and I hope that in this community we do share a common resolve to come out the other side together. So that is something that has my full support. I would like to see the letter, so if we could get something like that sent to everyone. I don't know if we have yet. I would be interested in seeing those words, but the sentiment is something that I agree with.
Mr. Mayor, I just
We
forwarded
have a
the
draft.
documents. Mr. Mayor, I just forwarded the documents that I'd received from my counterpart in Mount Rainier to the full council.
Thank you. Is everyone able to receive that on email and see it? Or I know that we don't all have.
I've received it. Yeah, I've received it.
Is it
I'd
possible
like
to
to
bring
read
it up?
it.
Ms. Barnes, can you display it?
Sorry, I don't have it yet.
Well, while Ms. Barnes is pulling it up, the town manager and I spoke, and he was gracious enough to just share with me thoughts that he had about the letter and the language, and give me one second. There's one, I think, number 2 in the letter, the second point in that letter specifically requests or suggests that if you could scroll down a little bit, it asks that landlords discount the months of May and all future months during the state of emergency by 25% for all tenants. I am comfortable with changing that, all tenants, to, tenants who are suffering or experiencing financial difficulties, or tenants who can demonstrate that they are experiencing financial difficulties. And maybe a footnote that would point to landlords that they could use the standard that's being used by the state in getting tenant relief. And also, if everyone felt comfortable using Mount Rainier's as a template, we could also add language that encourages residents or tenants to seek financial assistance and emergency rental assistance to assist them as well, so that it's a letter not just imploring landlords to take our recommendations, but also imploring tenants to take our recommendations and provide them with information and resources where they could obtain financial assistance, rental assistance. So I could draft something
I feel like
and circulate.
No, I feel like that's a
Appreciate
great idea. We're living in this technological world where, like, everything that I'm doing in my classrooms, I'm linking additional information to those. It's like my handouts to my students are now developing legs that they didn't have in the past because we could attach things to it. And I think that for a document like this and guiding our residents, Councilman Lingua and I had a dialogue similar to this the other day, where if we can update consistently where our residents can seek those assistance offerings, then we're all the better for that. So I like that, Councilwoman Dixon.
Just to add to the discussion of external supports, the county started yesterday, as it is just yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah.
A rental assistance program. My understanding is that in the first day they received 1,400 applications. And my understanding from the previous week, although this may have been updated, is that they thought that they were going to be able to support perhaps only as many as 600 families. I don't know where that estimate came from. And I also know that the quantities and applications of the CARES Act money that was released by Congress to the county has become more clear in the last week. So it may be that there's more money in that program than there was a week ago. So I just wanted to add that to the mix of this discussion.
Okay. So essentially what you're saying, Mr. Mayor, is that the program that the county is setting up is going to be essentially depleted very quickly.
That
If not already.
Remember that in this crisis that a day is a long time and a week is forever. And so the estimate that I was given from 8 days ago may be completely wrong at this time. And I know that other programs that the county has set up have been nominally depleted and then replenished by additional funds. So I can't say what the status of the program is. I will say that I believe that that need is very high, and so I would not at all be surprised if the program, almost any amount of money was put towards it, would be depleted quickly.
Well, I would imagine it would, because essentially I would imagine it would be depleted quickly given the numbers, given the population of the county and the fact that this is going to help 600 families. And you figure as a ballpark guess that you have essentially 240,000 families in the county, that you're looking at essentially 6 families out of 2,400 being able to get eligible out of every 2,400 being eligible for that aid, or 1 in 400 families. So
Yep.
I would imagine it's going to go very quickly.
And even if they quadrupled it, then it would be the only 1%. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is in a rock and a hard place. I think the idea of the map, if I may, Mr. Mayor, if you're finished.
Yes, I was just providing a little additional information about the programs that were out there, some of the programs that were out there.
I think the idea that Mount Rainier had and what we're considering here is a good start. I think if anything, one thing that we've demonstrated with the legislation we've passed so far is that the town wishes to engage both businesses and residents as partners in terms of trying to get through this. And I was thinking if there's some way with this letter, we're able to continue that same approach. I think it's something that wherever we can help tenants and the landlords be able to address this issue of making sure that meeting rent payments, be that through county, state, federal programs, be that we're advocating on behalf of both tenants and residents at those levels for additional assistance, that we do so in conjunction with other municipalities. So it's more of a larger coordinated advocacy approach that we do so. I think in one thing that we, with this approach that as we're doing with the other things that we've passed, is that we maintain a position that we're working to help both groups during this pandemic and the consequential downturn from it. Any comments on that?
Mr. Mayor,
Hello?
if I can. I hear you, Councilmember Lingler.
Okay.
Speak, please speak if you wish to, Mr. Lustician.
Yes. So if it pleases the council, the staff team, since we're talking about compiling different resources and that, can put together a draft. Since Councilmember Dixon brought this up, we could send it to her and then out to the whole council. But if we could have a day or two to pull the resources together. Ms. Barnes and Ryan have been working on having a resource page on our website. So we have a lot of the information, but if it pleases the council, we can put together a draft for review.
It's fine by me.
I'd like that. Thank you.
Councilmember Dixon, is that fine?
Works for me.
Okay, Councilmember Mayers?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Do we want to schedule another special legislative to consider this for next Tuesday, a week from now, the 19th, our work session? Or do we want to
Well, I
That'd be
believe
fine
we
by me.
have,
the regular?
It would be during.
Pardon?
I have a
Ms.
little
Barnes,
blip on my, I had a little blip. So I had a dropout on my internet connection for a few seconds there. Can whoever spoke last repeat about the special legislative meeting?
Mayor Thompson,
Thoughts
we
on that?
have a special legislative meeting scheduled for next week, a work session and a public hearing. So
Okay,
it was,
so it's
we
already
could add it.
scheduled.
Mhm.
Okay. Council, do you want to consider it at that time, or do you want to consider it as part of the work session for possible adoption at the June session?
I'm happy either way, just as long as we get a letter that we want to, that we're all comfortable with, and being that draft's going to help, is going to be drafting this, and it's not incurring on any other things that they're trying to get done at this time. Either date is fine by me.
Okay, well, the the staff seemed to indicate that they could have a letter out in a few days. So if everyone could review it when it shows up in your email box fairly quickly and let me know, then I can decide on Thursday or Friday whether it goes on next week's special legislative or onto the work session, or for that matter, we could just add it at the time of the meeting. So there are plenty of options.
Works for me.
My preference would
Okay.
be, to get it done as soon as possible.
Agreed.
So,
Okay.
my preference would be not to delay.
Okay,
Sure.
very good. I will take that on as a priority to try to get it out, try to have it on a special legislative next week. Next, is there any further discussion of this? Any public comments? Hearing none, seeing no raised hands on the participants list. The next item under unfinished business was the proposed charter, personnel manual, and code changes for changing the hiring and firing process for department heads. I will just dive into this. I had some productive discussions with council members Dixon and Lingua over the weekend. And we discussed ways that the council could still be materially involved in the selection of the approval of department heads, while it not being a formal decision of the council. And an option that came out from these discussions was that the town manager would be required to inform the council of his choice approximately 2 weeks, give or take a little bit, a week and a half to 2 weeks, depending on who I was speaking to,
Or her.
before a formal offer would be given to the applicant, to the candidate for the job. And this would give the council time to convene a meeting and discuss with the town manager who the candidate was, what their qualifications were, and provide feedback up to and including the, in the worst possible circumstances, the council deciding to terminate the employment of the town manager. So there's plenty of oomph in this should the council be completely at odds with the town manager about this potential future hire. And this has a few advantages, one of which is that there's no need to call a meeting if people are sufficiently okay with what they hear. Then there doesn't have to be a meeting to approve. We don't have to find quorum. We don't have to have an advance notice. The council can just let the hire occur. But if there is an interest in not letting the hire occur, then the council has sufficient opportunity to provide very strong feedback. So that's where we are at this time. And I just wanted to bring it up for public discussion and see if anybody had additional thoughts since I had those individual discussions. And of course, council members Foe and Mayors, I did not speak to you about this, but I thought I would bring you in on the conversation in this way. So any thoughts?
So for clarification, I'm just going to repeat it to make sure that I understand, which is that all of the leadership positions going forward would require the town manager to provide a minimum of 10 days notice for the hiring or dismissal of any of those candidates. And in the event that council is not comfortable with the hire or dismissal, then the council can you help me with that last part?
I'm going to first of all back up and correct. There's an asymmetry in the hiring and the dismissal of department heads. So in the hiring, it is the final decision of the town manager, and the town manager receives advice from the town council in advance of that, but the decision is the town manager's. For the dismissal of a department head, the council has to take formal action to approve the dismissal. So we do have to have a meeting. We do have to approve that dismissal. And the idea behind that is that the dismissal of a large number of department heads could be very damaging to the viability of the town government, and that there should be barriers in the way of that happening in a big way, compared to the hiring, which is unlikely to have multiple hires all at the same time. Multiple dismissals could conceivably happen at the same time, and so that was just the idea of that asymmetry. There, just to mention, there are many other issues bound up in this legislation about department heads being different class of employees than many of them are at this time, and other items that are bound up. That seems to me that one of the more important ones, but also that it recognizes them as department heads as opposed to their current positions, which are not formally recognized in the personnel manual. So all of those are in there, but I did want to clarify that the dismissal of department heads will still require formal approval of the council, whereas the hiring of a new department head allows the council an immense latitude in providing feedback to the town manager, but it is the final decision is up to the town manager. Is that
Okay,
clear?
so let me try it. Yeah, I'm going to try it again. So for all department heads, the hiring of all department heads would require notice by a town manager and informal recommendation or thoughts by the council.
Mhm.
Whereas dismissal of any department head would require notice and a formal approval by the council.
Yes.
And in terms of timing, a minimum of 10 days notice for either the hiring and the dismissal.
There is no timing. Well, we could do that. This is still just discussing. We don't have a written form of piece of legislation in front of us. We could require that. I would say that with dismissal, the advance notice is not so important, since we have to get everyone to agree to come together for a meeting to discuss. It would be require advance public notice, as all of them do. But we could, if you wish to have some time of advance notice, we could do that. That's possible.
For the just how would I'm just trying to like play it out, like how it would be drafted. How would the dismissal, if we didn't have a formal notice, then
So the
what
town manager would have to say, I seek to dismiss the following department head, and the council, mayor and council would be informed of this. And the mayor would call a meeting of the council to consider the proposal. Either if there were a regular meeting, it could be at the regular meeting, or at a closed session before the regular meeting. Since it's a personnel matter, then we would probably consider it in closed session. Otherwise, could call a special single purpose closed session, special legislative, and that would require assembling a quorum of the council and so on. But the advance notice for that would just be the requirements of advance notice for a special legislative meeting.
got it. Okay. I think I understand it.
Does this sound, are there council concerns about this proposal?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
My question is to type of meetings for each case. Type of meeting ahead of, should the council decide to meet on a appointment, what type of meeting would that be? Would that be a executive session?
It would almost certainly be a closed session because it's concerning a personnel
Okay.
matter for a very specific
Personnel.
person. And
Okay.
I presume that their qualifications, it may be that someone who is seeking a job like that would not actually want their identity to be publicly revealed. So yes, I would have to imagine that
Sure.
that would be a
Okay.
closed session.
Okay, and the meeting for a dismissal, I would take it would be in a special legislative or regular legislative session?
It would be, if there were a
would
regular
think it would
legislative
follow the
schedule that
same.
could occur as part of that, but it would be a closed session. Also, I would imagine. I can't imagine how we could
Also,
discuss.
so it would be both a closed and a regular late.
Yes,
Okay, so both a closed and executive session and a legislative session
yes.
of some type.
Mhm.
Okay. And you had said regarding the timing for the dismissal, you were saying that timing is open in terms of advance notice.
Well,
Is that correct?
there's state law requirements for advance notice, and then there's also just finding a time when a quorum of the council can be convened, which is not typically instantaneous. It typically takes at least several days to get enough council members together to have a quorum.
Okay, and that's for when the council would be taking a formal action on something, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And in the case of the appointment, which we're considering that council would be taking an informal action, would those requirements still apply or not?
They would still apply, but I just wanted to, I thought it was a good idea to have a delay in there, again, to allow enough time for the council to convene, to have a closed special legislative session. And so
Okay.
that's why I proposed the several day delay.
Okay. So were you a several day being, I take it what you're talking about is business days, not including holidays?
Yes.
Okay. And would that amount be anywhere, say, between 7 and 10 business days?
In my discussions with Councilmember Dixon, I just threw out the number 10, but I am not married to that number. So
Okay.
I would want to have at least 5, and
Okay.
I would think that many more than 10 would be sort of going over the top and making it difficult for the person who was hoping to get the job to sit on their hands. But you know, I'm flexible on all of those.
Okay.
Anywhere in between those seems okay to me.
Okay.
And of course,
Well, my
because there is no requirement for formal council action, then that can all occur in a variety of ways. We don't have to get together and have a meeting. We can have one-on-ones with the town manager to review the material. We can have a few people get together. There are various ways that can happen, but just having some amount of time so that the council can schedule,
Review
get
and
into their
respond.
schedule to review and respond to the proposal. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I would be fine with either of those timeframes, preferring a shorter time frame out of consideration for the town manager to be able to act on an offer for a candidate that they've chosen.
Okay. Well, I will work with the town manager to generate changes to the legislation to match this proposal. And I will either put a number in there or I'll leave a blank. And that number can be filled in by the council.
I think I'm more comfortable with 10 days. I don't, based on how difficult it can be to convene, or I personally don't want to feel like my hand is being forced. Obviously, this is non-binding, it's just a recommendation, but I would want sufficient time to review, and I think 10 days, not 10 business days, 10 calendar days is a week, and 3 more days is not, I don't think that's terrible in terms of a wait. Obviously, it can occur sooner, but I think 5 days, I mean, sometimes it takes me 5 days just to get a chance to go through, you know, my council email.
So we're being clear, we're talking business days, correct?
I heard calendar days from Councilmember Dixon, so.
Yeah, I was just thinking calendar, like 10 calendar days. I think 10 business days is pushing it, but 10 calendar days, just 10 days, 10 calendar days.
Well, 10
That's
calendar
roughly
days
equivalent to, that's roughly equivalent to 7 business days.
okay. I'll put something in the proposed legislation, and you guys can discuss it.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? Councilmember Mayers, Councilmember Foe? Mr. Foe is shaking his head.
None for me.
Okay. Are there any public comments? See, we do have a member of the public in attendance. That's great. Okay, hearing no further
Does the town
comments,
manager, I
let me
know
check
he
for-
weighed in.
Mr. Town Manager, do you have any comments?
I don't have any comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move on then to new business. Are there any items of new business? I'm seeing a shaking head and hearing no items of new business. So can I have a motion to adjourn this special legislative session?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion was made by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Mayers. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Dixon,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Henry is not present. Councilmember Richardson is not present. Councilmember Mayers,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 401. We are adjourned at 7:54. Thank you all very much. Thank you all to staff for being here this evening.
Enjoy your evenings, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Good night, everyone.
Stay safe.
You too.